I opened my own bedroom door and saw my boyfriend half-dressed in our bed, with my cousin kneeling between his legs. And for a full second, all three of us just stared at each other like I was the one interrupting something private. The worst part is that there had already been so many tiny things leading up to that moment that I'd almost trained myself not to trust my own instincts. My boyfriend Eli and I had been together for 4 years, living together for 1. We weren't one of those dramatic couples who screamed in parking lots or posted passive-aggressive stuff online. We had routines, shared grocery lists, a rent split, and a notes app. He knew how I like my coffee, and I knew he'd leave every cabinet door slightly open like a raccoon had been through the kitchen. My cousin Tessa had been staying with us for just 2 weeks after a breakup and job situation that kept changing depending on the day. Sometimes she said her ex had emptied their joint account. Sometimes she said she left because his mom was controlling. Sometimes she said she just needed space to think. She's 2 years younger than me, pretty in a careless way, and the kind of person who makes people feel special by paying very close attention to them for exactly the amount of time it takes to get what she wants. I know that sounds bitter, and maybe it is, but I let her stay anyway. At first, it was normal enough. She slept in the office on an air mattress. She cried in my kitchen at midnight. I bought her those stupid, expensive green juices she liked because she said she couldn't keep food down from stress. Eli was nice to her, which I appreciated. He'd ask if she wanted takeout when he ordered. He fixed the loose leg on her suitcase. He even gave her one of his hoodies when the apartment got cold because she said all her stuff was still at her ex's place. That should have been nothing. It probably would have been nothing if it were one thing. But then it became 100 little things. I'd come home from work and hear them laughing in the living room, and the laughter would stop in that weird, clipped way when I unlocked the door. If I asked what was funny, Tessa would say, "Nothing, you had to be there." Eli would smile too hard and ask about my day. He started showering as soon as he got home, which wasn't like him. He bought a new cologne after wearing the same cheap cedar one for years. Tessa suddenly started wearing makeup just to run to Target. Once I walked into the kitchen and she was standing very close to him while he showed her something on his phone. Not touching exactly, just close enough that when they stepped apart, it felt rehearsed. I said something to Eli one night after she went to sleep. "You and Tessa seem weird lately." He didn't even look up from his phone. "Weird how?" "I don't know, just kind of intense." He laughed, but only once. "Babe, she's your cousin." That shut me up more than it should have. Like if I kept pushing, I'd become the paranoid one sexualizing innocent behavior. And to be fair, I wasn't easy to live with lately. My mom had been in and out of appointments for a heart issue, work was a mess, and I'd been snapping at Eli over dumb things like laundry and dishes. I was tired all the time, distracted, meaner than usual. A week later, Tessa asked me if Eli had always been that thoughtful. I was cutting strawberries at the counter. "What do you mean?" "He just notices things," she said, leaning against the fridge in one of his t-shirts. "Like I mentioned once that I hate yellow mustard and he got Dijon instead." I remember looking at the knife in my hand because I didn't trust my face. "Yeah," I said, "he's attentive." She smiled in this small, private way that made me want to slap it off her. But then she asked if I wanted to watch trash TV with her and acted normal. And again, I told myself I was being dramatic. The first thing that made me feel actually sick was the phone charger. Eli's charger had been plugged into his side of our bed for months. One morning I found it in the office, tangled up near Tessa's air mattress. I asked him about it casually while we were brushing our teeth. "Oh, my phone died in there while I was helping her update her resume," he said, toothpaste foaming at the corner of his mouth. "At midnight?" I almost asked, but didn't. I hate that I didn't. Instead, I started paying attention in a way that made me hate myself. I checked the trash for takeout receipts on nights I worked late. I looked at our doorbell camera timestamps. I noticed Tessa doing laundry in tiny loads that somehow always included his gym clothes. I noticed Eli turning his phone face down, then overcorrecting and leaving it out screen up like he'd read an article about how suspicious that looked. One Friday, my coworker asked if I wanted to grab a drink after work, and I almost said yes, just so I wouldn't have to go home and watch whatever this was. But I was exhausted, so I drove back to the apartment around 8:30. When I opened the front door, the apartment was dark except for the TV glow. No one in the living room. I heard a thud from the hallway, then a low voice, then silence. "Tessa," I called. A beat. Then Eli's voice from the bedroom. "Hey." Not, "We're in here." Not, "Come in." Just, "Hey," in the same tone someone uses when they've broken a glass. My stomach dropped so hard it actually hurt. Our bedroom door was pulled almost closed. Not latched, just resting against the frame. I pushed it open and saw them. Tessa was on her knees on my side of the bed. My side. Her hair was messed up, lipstick smeared, one hand braced against the mattress. Eli was standing in front of her, shirt off, jeans open, with the expression of someone whose life has just split into a before and after. There was no innocent explanation, no weird angle, no misunderstanding. I had caught them in the act so clearly that even now I can still see the exact way the lamplight hit his shoulder. Nobody spoke first. Then Tessa stood up too fast and said, "It's not." And I laughed. Not because anything was funny, because if I didn't laugh, I think I would have blacked out. "Please," I said, "please don't insult me like that." Eli reached for me. "Listen to me." I backed away so hard I hit the dresser. "Do not touch me." Tessa started crying immediately, which made me angrier than if she'd been smug. She kept pulling her shirt down and saying my name over and over like we were both victims of the same weather event. I looked at Eli. "How long?" He ran a hand through his hair. It's not a relationship. I don't know why that was the sentence that broke me, but it was. Not an apology, not denial, just clarification. "So, how long?" I said again. He looked at the floor. Tessa answered. 3 weeks. 3 weeks. 3 weeks of shared dinners and inside jokes and her asking to borrow my moisturizer. 3 weeks of me paying the higher electric bill because she was getting back on her feet. 3 weeks of him kissing me goodbye in the mornings. I told her to get out. She said she had nowhere to go. I said that sounded familiar. Eli tried to say we should all calm down and talk like adults, and I threw the ceramic jewelry dish from my nightstand at the wall. It shattered above his head, and for once he looked genuinely afraid of me. "Talk," I said. "You want to talk in the room where I found my cousin on her knees for you?" Then he said something I still can't decide if it makes it worse or just more honest. He said, "You've been gone from us for months." Us. Not me and him. Us. Like at some point, without my consent or knowledge, my relationship had become a group project. I told him if he said that word again, I'd call the police just to make the evening more memorable. Tessa grabbed her suitcase and left crying. I don't know where she went. Eli slept on the couch, though slept is generous because I sat on the kitchen floor until 3 a.m., listening to him pace and occasionally say my name through the dark like that was enough. The next morning, he tried to explain. He said it started as venting. Tessa thought I was emotionally checked out. He felt lonely. She felt vulnerable. One night they got drunk while I was at my mom's house. Then they crossed a line. Then it became this thing they kept meaning to stop. He said he hated himself. He said he still loved me. He said what he felt for her wasn't real. I asked if he would have told me if I hadn't walked in. He didn't answer. That was answer enough. I told him to leave for a few days. He did. My aunt called me the day after that and asked, in this careful voice, what exactly happened because Tessa was very upset and saying I'd thrown her out with nowhere to go. I told her exactly what happened. My aunt went quiet for so long I thought the call dropped, then said, "Well, these situations are usually more complicated than they seem." That sentence has been rotting in my brain ever since. Because here's the part that makes people judge me when I tell it honestly. 4 days later, I let Eli come back to talk again. And we didn't just talk. We cried. He held me while I cried, which is disgusting and pathetic, and somehow still what happened. He said he'd cut Tessa off completely. He offered therapy, passwords, moving out, anything. He said he'd spend the rest of his life making this up to me. And some deeply humiliating part of me wanted to believe him. Not because I think what he did is forgivable, but because blowing up a 4-year life is not abstract. When it's your lease, your furniture, your routines, your future plans, your mother asking where he is when she likes him more than half your blood relatives. Tessa has texted me 3 times, 2 apologies, 1 angry message saying I was acting like she seduced a married man, and that Eli made his own choices, which is true. And I hate that it's true because it almost makes her last message the most honest thing anyone said. I haven't answered her. Eli is staying in the apartment this week, in the office now that her stuff is gone. I told everyone we're figuring things out, which is cowardly but accurate. Some hours I want to burn every reminder of both of them. Some hours I look at him and see a stranger, and some hours, against my own will, I see the person I planned a life with and wonder whether one vile, unforgivable thing should erase everything before it. I know how weak that sounds. But I also know that if I leave him, Tessa becomes permanently welded into the story of my life in a way I can't stand. And if I stay, then maybe I'm the kind of woman who can be humiliated in her own bedroom and still negotiate the terms. I haven't decided which part of that is worse.